to be more specific as a kind of Dynamax Pokemon necessarily. So it's a very interesting choice. Not as interesting, however, as some of the Pokemon I see in front of me, Gabby.
Yeah, I mean, we want to talk about interesting. I think Ditto and the Indeedee Kartana combination on Event's side of the field are what jump out to me. But we'll be watching this game from Event's perspective. As you can see, their team is just on over half the teams in the metagame right now. The interesting thing that's happened between the last dual restricted format, which was back in 2019, proceed to wreak havoc on everything on the field. So having a steel type Pokemon that resists that is certainly really nice to have in this matchup. And interestingly enough, it does look like Jessica will be starting off this game with a boost of her own, but it's one more of the size variety rather than stats.
Yeah, exactly. The Dynamax Palkia coming into the fray, such a formidable Pokemon. Possibly so formidable it's causing a little bit of havoc on the stream. We do apologize, but we'll do our best to try and challenge through it. Xerneas, however, just going straight for a protect here, as Indeedee as well. Event playing very defensively in their first turn here, just protecting up both Pokemon, trying to maybe burn through one of these turns of the Dynamax Palkia. That's going to go straight out for a Max Quake. Really like this play here. You're going to do a little bit of chip to the Xerneas, but I think the critical thing by the Max Quake is to be able to get that special defense boost up on Jessica's side of the field, particularly when you've got two Pokemon that are such heavy physical, special attacking Pokemon, such as the Xerneas. Having that extra little defense boost is going to help you out.
Exactly. Palkia is a part dragon type Pokemon, so those fairy type attacks from the Xerneas will be doing a ton of damage, especially after boosted by a potential Geomancy. So getting those special defense boosts in now just means that once Geomancy is active on the field for Event, this Palkia doesn't have to be as afraid of the Xerneas, and as a result really does free up Jessica's game plan a bit. You know, she can afford to attack into this Indeedee because of those redirections, just knowing that Palkia will have the time on the field to power through what is going to be a very scary Xerneas if Event is going for what I think they're going for.
Oh, huge damage going down into the Indeedee. Gonna fall victim to the follow-up, though, by that Max Quake. And once again, Jessica playing well to get those special defense boosters up on her side of the field here. Certainly, the Zacian is going to be happy to see Indeedee KO'd. It's now got kind of a more easier target down into that opposing Xerneas that is going for the Geomancy. It's a tried and tested move on Xerneas. Going to be able to boost up its special attack, special defense, and speed by 2 stages here, making it once again the formidable Pokemon that it is with the use of that power herb.
Yeah, and what I find interesting is that, you know, even with the introduction of Dynamax, even with the introduction of Pokemon like Zacian, like Eternatus, Xerneas in this position still likes to go for the Geomancy. Does benefit from a potential Dynamax from here on out. Having the Incineroar next to it is not going to help too much beyond that Intimidate, unfortunately, due to the Psychic Terrain up on the field. But really, Xerneas has found the opportunity to get the Geomancy, and it will now have the opportunity to start going on the offense. And with the help of maybe a Flare Blitz from this Incineroar, handle that Zacian. If Event can find a way to KO the Zacian on Jessica's side of the field, and assuming Jessica doesn't have the Ditto in the back of her party to take those boosts from that Xerneas later on down the line, I think that Event is going to have a bit of smooth sailing from here on out. Knowing the Groudon is here to also damage that Zacian is going to be key as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. The Groudon's critical here. The Zacian is looking so happy against that Xerneas. You know, it can get all the special defense boosts it wants from the Geomancy, but those Behemoth Blades are going to hit really hard, particularly considering that Xerneas has entered its Dynamax form now. It's going to be a prime target for those Steel-type attacks. I did think it was a nice idea having that Incineroar to potentially go for a Flare Blitz, but it's nice to have the Groudon on the field, setting the sun, going to make those Fire-type moves boosted going forward, and hopefully Groudon's going to be able to help out that Xerneas for Event. Xerneas is going to go for that Max Guard, however, just protecting itself. And sad times for Groudon. It's going to be taking this max Geyser. It's not enough to pick up the KO, but it does ruin its hopes of having a sunny day out here on the field, as unfortunately now the rain is going to come into effect. That is going to protect up that Zacian a little bit. So great play here from Jessica, just being able to make sure that the weather is staying in Jessica's favor and that the Xerneas is still going to be in a very vulnerable position going forward. Even though it has taken the speed boost from that Geomancy, there's not a lot that the Xerneas can really do to threaten that opposing Zacian, and it's just going to be able to follow up with the Behemoth Blade.
Yeah, and now that the Dynamax is done on the Palkia, Jessica is free to start switching some Pokemon around as well. You know, if she does have that Incineroar in the back of her party, that might be a nice switch here, as it will resist any Fairy-type attacks and will help her find the additional 2 turns she needs to get through the Dynamax on Event's side of the field. She could also just keep that Palkia in on the field, go for a Protect, take less damage from the, you know, max Fairy type attack that this Xerneas will be throwing out this turn. It's not going to knock out Zacian even with those boosts, and really the best thing Event can do to protect the Xerneas at this point in time is to stack those Intimidates up on that Zacian. So barring something like a critical hit, Behemoth Blade will not knock out.
Well, here we go. The Max Starfall is going to come down and connect into that opposing Palkia that went for a Protect. Even through Protect, though, does a significant chunk of damage, taking it below 50%, putting it into that orange ember of the HP bar, sending that Misdew Terrain as well. Something that, you know, if that Incineroar wants to switch out, come back in again, is going to approve of being able to go for those fake outs. But the Behemoth Blade is going to come out now from this opposing Zacian. Does find its mark into that opposing Xerneas. Does a huge chunk of damage, but thanks to the Intimidates, isn't going to be able to pick up the KO against the Xerneas.
And that's something really important for both these trainers to note, because it looks like that Zacian, had it been at neutral attack from that range, that Behemoth Blade most likely would have knocked out. So that second Intimidate really helping Event get that Zacian down to -1 and giving the Xerneas the opportunity to go for one more attack here. Jessica does still have the option to switch out that Palkia, and that will mean that Xerneas' Dynamax has expired. I am a little bit curious to know about what Pokemon she has in the back, as she hasn't switched yet. But this Zacian and this Palkia together are applying so much pressure on the field. You have to imagine that whatever is waiting in the back is also going to be a very strong start.
Exactly, and I like the switch here as well, you know, preserving that Palkia for a little bit later on, bringing the Incineroar in to apply the Intimidate down against the opposing Incineroar that's able to go for the attack now that Misty Terrain is in the field with that fake out. Going to be, of course, doing minimal damage, but Xerneas really is the heavy hitter here, going for the Max Starfall once again, and just wipes out that Incineroar from the field from Jessica there. Absolutely KO'd.
Unfortunately for that Incineroar, it may be the Alolan champion, but it's not going to be the champion of this battle. Maybe some battle royales be a little bit more lucky, and it's tough to say. But I think, honestly, I think that Incineroar did what it had to do, even though it was taken out in a single hit. Buying time for Jessica to send that Palkia back in once Dynamax has expired will open up a few more doors. This also gives the opportunity for Jessica as well to find one more turn to attack that Xerneas, depending on what Pokemon gets sent in next. Interestingly enough, it is going to be that Palkia once again. Because of the switch, will have access to Protect once more. If I had to guess, that's probably what Jessica's looking for here. Again, just trying to buy time. If that Ditto is the last Pokemon in the back of her party, you really want to find the opportunity to send in that Ditto when you know it's going to have an advantage against your opponents, all of your opponents' remaining Pokemon, as we are getting close to this end game. And I think her best bet for the game at this point in time is to actually try and copy either the Incineroar or the Groudon. So not quite making an appearance here yet, because it will be a lot easier for that Ditto to do what it does best once that Xerneas has been removed from the field.
Exactly, and the Incineroar going to switch out here for Event, bringing in their Groudon instead to kind of reset that weather, bring the sun back onto the field. That's going to certainly help out against that opposing Zacian if you want to go for any fire type moves, get the boost on the fire damage here. Dazzling Gleam comes out from the Xerneas, is going to be able to pick up the KO against that opposing Palkia, removing one of the restrictors there for Jessica, but it does free up Jessica the option to now switch in a Pokemon from the back. Behemoth Blade this time going to find its mark down onto the opposing Xerneas. No Dynamax here to contend with the extra HP, and just going to be able to remove it from play. So we're restricted a piece and now both our players have the option to bring a Pokemon in from the back. We know, of course, it's going to be the Incineroar for event, and the sun is in the sky. These Flare Blitzes are certainly going to hurt if they find its mark, but the key thing for Jessica is that Ditto finds its mark against the opposing Groudon. Incineroar's not looking too happy now.
It really isn't. So some fun Ditto facts for y'all if you haven't seen how this Pokemon works in a restricted format before. Honestly, 9 times out of 10, Ditto is going to be running a Choice Scarf to guarantee that it has the speed advantage against the Pokemon that it's copying, because otherwise Ditto, except for the HP stat, copies every other stat pretty much verbatim of the Pokemon. So, you know, Zacian going for the Protect here, I think just guarding it from a possible Precipice Blades miss on the opposing Groudon, also guarding it against a flinch, as that is going to be Misty Terrain up. If this Precipice Blades lands on the Ditto and picks up the knockout, that would have been unfortunate, but it looks like Ditto is going to be around for that one attack, and we'll have to see just how it's going to roll.
Exactly, and it was nice going for the fake out into the opposing Ditto, just not going to allow it to deal any damage to the Incineroar that I think is going to be quite critical at this stage for event to try and, you know, KO against this opposing Zacian. Groudon goes for the Protect for event though, as Sacred Sword comes out, going to deal a chunk of damage to the opposing Incineroar, roughly about a third of damage there, as Ditto goes for the Precipice Blades. Does it find its mark on the Incineroar? Yes, it does. Animation has activated, going to be targeting down and remove Incineroar from the battlefield here. Event remaining with just their Groudon in this particular match of top 16. I mean, you know, a Precipice Blade's certainly going to hurt against both these opposing Pokemon.
It really is, and it really does come down to speed at this point in time. And because this Ditto is most likely holding a Choice Scarf, and because the Zacian is just such a naturally fast Pokemon here, a Behemoth Blade and a Precipice Blades will certainly pick up the win. It's possible that this Behemoth Blade alone will deal enough damage to KO that Groudon, but it looks like it just falls short given how many Intimidates have happened on that Zacian with Precipice Blades misses all around. It looks like a Behemoth Blade is actually just going to win this game 1 for Jessica.
Oh my goodness. Honestly, it's just the heartbreak. I think every player who's ever run a Groudon knows that feeling when Precipice Blades miss. And we just had it there on 3 occasions. The Behemoth Blade will indeed, as you said, Gabby, pick up the win there for Jessica. But I mean, oh, just the irony of that. You know, the Behemoth Blade didn't pick up the KO first of all. Then we had the Precipice Blades. It missed. And then Precipice Blades missed again. And it's just this situation where absolutely, oh, Groudon, what are you doing? You're so blind. It's just heartbreaking for these players.
You know, it's also kind of interesting that the Groudon and the Ditto that copied the Groudon missed the Precipice Blades on the same turn.
True.
I mean, that's not how it works. No, please don't think this is how it actually works. But it's always kind of funny when something like that happens and you wonder, did Ditto maybe also copy Groudon's eyesight for this match?
Very possibly.
Very possibly. But going into this game too, as it looks like Event just quickly locked in their picks for this game, you have to talk about adjustments. And while I really do like Event's strategy, and you know, I think that Xerneas and Groudon as a restricted pair is really a classic combination that has done well throughout many different formats. It's really struggling to find its mark here against the Zacian and Palkia in particular, just because of how the type matchups work. You know, I think that Jessica did a fantastic job in that game 1 of, you know, keeping that Zacian around on the board so that it was just damaging enough to be a threat, even with all of those Intimidates. And the combination of the Zacian and Palkia to start is honestly a really powerful lead for Jessica. And unless Event considers maybe sending out their Incineroar at first, maybe don't set up the Psychic Terrain right away so you can utilize that fake out, that Xerneas is going to struggle to find those attacks again like we saw in game 1. It's true that it did eventually get the Geomancy up and it was eventually able to go on the offensive. But it just really struggled, and you don't necessarily want to be setting your leads up in a way that Xerneas already, right out the gate, is going to have to be very careful about what it's staring down.
Yeah, what we're actually looking at, Gabby, is complete, again, mirror of what happened in game 1. We've got the same full Pokemon out on the battlefield for our trainers. Psychic Surge has activated, Psychic Terrain is now in play. And I think the Indeedee is certainly an interesting choice. And I think one key thing to know is we have to make sure this indeed, if your event is able to capitalize on having that redirection, is the move where you is the turn where you redirect away the attacks going to be enough to help that Xerneas get into a strong enough position to be able to pick up those KOs? We saw how devastating it was against the Palkia, and then of course on the Incineroar when it switched in and was able to get the one-hit KO on it. But in the face of that Zacian, particularly as it is currently at +1 with the Intrepid Sword boost, you need to make sure that Xerneas is protected to be able to deal out those KOs later in the match.
Yeah, it's almost unfortunate, honestly, that the Xerneas and the Indeedee have to be out on the field next to each other, and the Indeedee has to be present with that follow me support. Otherwise, a switch in of the Incineroar into the Xerneas slot here might have been an interesting adjustment that would have certainly helped Indeedee take these attacks just a little bit better.
Yeah, but a nice adjustment here from Event, not going for the double protect like they did in game 1. Indeedee able to hang on with 9 HP, which is lovely for Event because it means that the Indeedee is going to be able to redirect away in this Max Quake. Going to be KO'd. Of course, Jessica will now get the special defense boost up on her side of the field. But the key thing I think here is if Event has clicked that Geomancy, then the Xerneas is going to be able to get those boosts a little bit earlier on in this game 1. And that means Event's going to be able to capitalize on having those boosts. Maybe go for the Dynamax, start applying a little bit more pressure earlier on in this match.
It's interesting because if you think back to game 1, this was essentially turn 2 of game 1, where we saw the combination, the Follow Me, the Geomancy, the Behemoth Blade, the Max Quake. So you're absolutely right. The key difference here in terms of time is just how many turns of Dynamax that Palkia has remaining. It has 2 turns now, which means it won't be able to max guard both of those turns to prevent taking damage from a potentially Dynamax Xerneas. And that's the key difference for Event at this point in time. You know, starting to get those Intimidates down on Zacian is going to be really good here. Another switch into a Groudon here would also benefit Event just because they could go for something. You know, they could get that second Intimidate down sooner. Though goes for the Dynamax. I could certainly get the +2 special defense as well with another Earth Power into that Incineroar. So even though it's looking like we're seeing a very similar game playing out this time around with that Dynamax on the Xerneas, I think this turn is going to be a little bit different than what we saw in game 1.
Yeah, and it's such a majestic sight seeing the Dynamax Xerneas come into play. Special defense and just try and help Jessica's Pokemon start withstanding some of the damage. Looks like we're back in action though, but it looks like not a lot of damage was dealt out on the field.
Yeah, if I had to guess, it looks like Event chose to double into that protecting Zacian, possibly. But it's interesting to see that there really is no damage down on the field from that Xerneas in the previous turn.
Maybe Palkia max guarded potentially. Just lovely being able to get this Pokemon in here to set the sun up, can apply some good pressure going forward with something like the Precipice Blades, as Xerneas does go for the Max Guard on this occasion, so just protecting itself up. Max Geyser, however, once again, Jessica able to predict when the sun is going to come and rain all over Event's Parade, and not able to pick up the KO against the Groudon though, but it certainly is cutting it close.
You know, it's interesting to see that Max Geyser play a second time. You have to wonder if you're in Jessica's shoes, you know, do you go for the Max Geyser or do you go for Earth Power or Max Quake, as both of those attacks would do significant damage to the Groudon and to the opposing Incineroar. I think what Jessica's thinking so by going for the Max Geyser here, I think that you basically maximize what you get from these secondary effects. You know, you get the weather up, which could weaken the Groudon or the Incineroar in the future, and you are clearly bulky enough to still take this max Starfall even without the Dynamax, which is huge.
Yeah, I mean, through the Protect, able to have that little bit of extra defensive sort of energy there, but still huge damage from a Dynamax Xerneas. One thing, though, that can, reduce that special attack, of course, is this parting shot from the Incineroar. And I think even though the stream's been a little bit choppy, I think I'm going to blame the Incineroars because they keep coming and leaving the battlefield, and it's kind of throwing things into a bit of haywire. But that's what we see Incineroars do time and time again. Resetting those Intimidates, having the fake out pressure, and having the move utility of Parting Shot gives Jessica the flexibility to be able to do this without having to hard switch. Having that Zacian out on the field now as well, just as the Dynamax turns end for the Xerneas, puts the Xerneas in a really fragile position. Groudon's had its health depleted so much at this point that something like the Behemoth Blade is going to be able to just pick up the KO against it.
Yeah, and Behemoth Blade is going to do a ton of damage to the Xerneas as well. Right now that Zacian has not been intimidated. We do see the Intimidate coming back into play, but unlike in the previous game, Zacian's just at neutral attack. It's not at -1. So Jessica's still in a great spot here to do some big damage with that Zacian, even though it's going to come at the cost of the Palkia with that Dazzling Gleam KO.
Exactly. Palkia will be returning to its Pokeball at the end of this turn here. Zacian does go for the Behemoth Blade. So again, looks like these trainers are really kind of trading Pokemon here. Xerneas picks up the KO against the opposing Palkia, but then Zacian able to get the solid one-hit KO against the opposing Xerneas. So Restricted's leaving the field left, right, and center here. Event down to their last two remaining Pokemon. And again, we see the combination of the Groudon and the Incineroar. So yes, we're going to be able to get the Sunshine up on the field here, but Jessica has her own Incineroar here. That Intimidate is certainly going to help out by reducing the damage that something like the Zacian and the Incineroar are going to have to take on Jessica's side from like a Precipice Blaze, for example.
Yeah, and unlike in the previous game, the Zacian will be able to protect this turn so that it doesn't have to worry about being flinched by that Incineroar. So Jessica could possibly just keep things simple here. Certainly you could go for the fake out match into the Groudon if you're worried about your opponent just going for that Precipice Blades to try and take out your own Incineroar. Or you could possibly even go for a parting shot to try and get another Intimidate, another attack drop down onto either of these two Pokemon. Really, as long as your game plan includes Zacian protecting this turn, so next turn it can outspeed and pick up a knockout with another Sacred Sword, you have a few options here depending on what you're more comfortable with.
Oh, I mean, this is a certain interesting turn of events. Seeing the Bulk Up come out from the Groudon, boosting up its attack and defense. Definitely the two stats you want boosted in this particular situation. Zacian having itself protected, though, as the Flare Blitz comes out from Jessica's own Incineroar, and unfortunately Groudon is going to be KO'd. I was going to say, it'd be so nice to be able to maybe have a Ditto in the back to copy those stats going forward, and then Zacian able to obviously pick up the KO against Groudon, but it's not going to be coming into fruition here, as Incineroar picks up that KO using the Sun. Groudon kind of set its own downfall there, with the Flare Blitz being boosted by the Sun.
Yeah, and it's also just the unfortunate thing about using Groudon as a restricted Pokemon without access to the Red Orb or its Primal Reversion. It is just a Ground-type Pokemon, so in a situation where a, Kyogre would resist the Water-type attacks being thrown at it, unfortunately for Groudon, it's just going to be taking neutral damage from those Flare Blitzes. And Jessica putting another Intimidate down on the field here, but not something you normally see. There are currently 3 Incineroar on the field right now. That's just something really special, I think. I think we should take a moment to really appreciate this because it's a very rare sight. It's a very rare sight.
It definitely is. But I mean, I am loving life. There are 3 pretty kitties on the screen right now. Very happy to see such a wonderful cat Pokemon in its element, particularly with the sun in the sky. All the moves are boosted. They're very, very happy. I do think we're going to see a plethora here of just minimal damage being dealt at by multiple Pokemon, as we're going to see trades of Flare Blitzes. We saw a Throat Chop there as well. And again, just going to be chipping away. We might even see some berries activate as well if they are holding those kind of super berries. But really, Jessica has set up the perfect end game for herself here, where, you've got 2 Incineroars versus 1. That already puts you in a more favorable position. But then, of course, you have a Pokemon in the back that's nice and speedy and is going to be able to deal some big damage once the Incineroar on event side has had itself depleted enough. But Not needed. The Jessica's own Incineroar. Was it the Ditto? Might be the Ditto Incineroar there. I'm losing track with all the cats. It is the Ditto with a critical hit. Picks up the KO. So Ditto once again proving why it is such a good Pokemon. And huge congratulations to Jessica.
Yeah, it's a very tricky Pokemon to use because at the end of the day, you really only have 5 Pokemon that you're confident in bringing into battle, as the Ditto just becomes something that you want to use from your opponent's team. So, in
Hmm.
order to use Ditto effectively, you really have to, one, be comfortable playing